was a senior at Stanford University in California, my geology professor John Brenner invited my friend Bob McDonald and me to his house for dinner. His wife had also invited some girls, and he handed us these slips of paper indicating whom she wanted us to escort. Well, I got this freshman Lou Henry, who, to be honest with you, had sort of intimidated me before when I first met her. McDonald got Grace Diggles, with whom I thought I could have a much better time, so we switched papers and partners. When we arrived at the Branners escorting different girls, Mrs. Branner didn't say a word. But when it came time to go in for dinner, she very sweetly said, "Mr. McDonald, will you please take Miss Diggles in to dinner?" So I ended up sitting next to Lou Henry anyway. And it was a very delightful experience. We had much in common. So, Miss Henry, I understand you're from Monterey, California. Now, have you always lived there?
No, actually, I was born in a small town of Waterloo, Iowa. I'm sure you have never heard of it.
Never heard of it. I most certainly have. I was born less than 100 miles away in West Branch, Iowa, August the 10th, 1874.
Why, that's the same year I was born, only 4 months earlier. That makes me the older woman now, doesn't it, Mr. Hoover?
Yes, I guess it does. If you don't mind my asking, Lou is a rather different name for a young lady.
Actually, my father wanted a son. He practically brought me up as a boy. Oh, he taught me how to ride horses, how to get along in the outdoors, took me on camping trips, and taught me all he knew about rocks, flowers, and fishing.
Fishing? Oh, that's something my brother and I spent a lot of time doing. As a matter of fact, that's a pastime I highly recommend to everybody, because it'll keep you out of trouble.
Oh, now, how's that?
Well, I've never heard of anybody committing a crime while fishing. So how did you come to be in California?
Well, my father was a banker, and when I was 10 years old, he moved the family to California, where he was going to open a new bank. How about you?
Well, my father was a blacksmith, and he also sold farm implements, but died when I was 6 years old. Then 2 years later, my mother passed over. So my older brother Tad and my younger sister May and I were orphan children, but we had a good, strong family who cared for us by different family members, so it meant we had to be separated. I went eventually to live with an uncle in Oregon, and that's how I ended up right here in California and in the very first class of students at Stanford. And speaking of first, I understand you're the first female geology major at Stanford, and they say maybe even in the entire United States.
Right.
How did you get interested in geology?
Well, as I said earlier, I had a love of the outdoors, and when I heard our host, Dr. Branner, give a speech on geology, well, I knew then that that's what I wanted to study. Actually, I've already been a teacher.
You know, my mother was a teacher.
So was my mother.
You know what, Miss Henry? We sure do have a lot in common. And you even love rocks.
Yes, I even love rocks.
Well, when I got back outside, I told my friend Bob McDonald, you know what? That Lou Henry's all right. She's not a bit snooty like I thought.
Well, after he graduated, Herbert had $40 and no visible prospects for work. So he stayed nearby working in the Southwest, first as a $2 a day miner's helper, then as an engineering assistant. Finally, he left the country for Australia as a representative for a London mining firm. After that, much of our courtship was done through the mail. As a matter of fact, my proposal came by Western Union, a telegram reading, "Will you marry me?" My reply, yes. Then began my lifelong occupation of caring for Bertie. As I later told a friend, in college I majored in geology, but I've majored in Herbert Hoover ever since.
And I was glad for Lou's prompt answer, because I would soon be leaving for China on a new assignment and wanted to take my new wife with me. Our wedding had to be arranged quickly, and since we could not find a Quaker minister, my faith, nor an Episcopalian minister, Lou's religion, we were married by a Father Mestres, a Catholic priest, friend of Lou's. We were married on February the 10th, 1899, and the very next day we left on what would be not only an exciting adventure in China, but an adventure throughout life as well.